What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're building a porcelain patio. Let's get into this. So this is day 5 of building our porcelain patio, and we're gonna go through step by step exactly what we did here from start to finish, and even using a new product to be able to lay the porcelain onto and show you what that's like. All right, we've got progress, decks removed, and we're about halfway through our excavation already. Bins getting loaded, brand new piece of equipment, and this just has to come all the way. We're going right to the fence, and then we have to build up the underside of this area. So actually we had to, on the other side of this fence, scrape out the sod. Then we'll use some of this soil, build it up so that our patio can actually come to the height just below the boards here. And we might have to cut that off actually, but coming along nicely. So far, we've got about 4 inches of our 3/4 inch clear in, and then we roll out our geogrid. Sometimes we put it all the way down to the bottom on top of the non-woven, but since we're doing a pipe here, I figured I would do it in a 4-inch lift. Before we've installed the non-woven geotextile, we did an amendment. So we dug down to our subsoils, and then we did Portland cement and 3/4 inch on top, crushed that down with the plate compactor, and then now we're going with our open graded base. You can see that our geogrid has a 6-inch overlap between pieces, and we're gonna fill in that spot after we finalize our trench there, get our pipe in. You can see that we use a non-woven geotextile. Since I am more of a fan of using non-woven with a biaxial geogrid, this is good for drainage and separation of your subsoil from your base, and this is good for stabilization. If you went woven, that would be good for stabilization and separation, but not drainage. And I always like to promote drainage on most of my projects if and wherever possible, but there's always an application for woven as well. Open graded base, since everything is permeable, especially our joints are going to be permeable, all of our water is going to go down into the base. So that becomes, okay, but what's going to happen to it once it gets to the edge, especially if my soil is clay, my subsoil is clay. If you have a sandy subsoil, that's great. It's going to penetrate into that sandy subsoil and move away from your property. But we're always dealing with a lot of clay. So where does it go from here once it hits that subsoil? Well, our excavation should mimic the top of pavement. So it should also slope away. So once that water hits that subsoil, it's going to slope away. And then what is it going to do when it hits the edge and there's nowhere for it to go? We're creating sort of like a reservoir. Well, in this case, for this property, what we've decided to do is, since we're going all the way to the fence here, this is the swale between our two properties. This is the perfect way to exit that water out. But we can't just dig out and allow it to go that way. We do need some sort of pipe. So we've dug a little bit of a trench to put our SDR35 perforated holes down into this. We'll bury over it. We'll also tie in our downspout into it as well, and then it'll go into the swale. Now, 2 options. You could do a French drain. We're just going to do a pop-up emitter because we have enough fall from this to the front of the yard, and that's the ideal scenario, is that you do have that fall, that slope from here now onto the front of the curb at the front of the house. So with our perforated 4-inch PVC pipe, holes down, we've got an end cap adhered on there. We've got an elbow. We got this clean out that'll go here, and we've lined that up nicely to our downspout. Perfect. And this running along the foundation, we always do solid pipe because we're not exactly against the foundation, only that little bit. Could have done perforated, but I like getting the downspout water away. And then we've got a Y here. So that's a Y connection. And it's always better to have a Y than a 90, just for the water to flow nicely. The 90, it'll hit and then it'll cause a little bit of a whirlpool. It'll add friction, with lack of a better term, but with a Y it'll just continuously follow that. And then this is, once again, is our perforated pipe. We set a little bit of HPB underneath the fabric just to have a nice little bedding, and then we put our fabric down, and then I put a little bit of HPB along the sides, not much, just to kind of like stabilize it. Then we'll put our 3/4 inch clear on top. This has, we still have about 2 inches of gravel on top, and then it's our base, so then 8 inches. So we've got about 10 inches of gravel on top of this. And then this finally connects to our adapter. So it's a 4-inch to corrugated adapter. Our corrugated perforated goes in, and then we've got a pop-up emitter that'll come up there and exit into the swale. This is what I found to be the best way to cut porcelain here so far, is having 2 clamps on a 4-foot level. This is a 4-foot piece, so 4-foot level, and clamping it on my cut right along the line, and then using that as a guide, and my saw here, my 9-inch battery powered Milwaukee with a porcelain blade on it, and just running it along here, giving it a first score, and then taking my time running up and down it to get that nice clean cut. And we've got our cuts here. Sometimes you can get chips, from what I've heard, with cutting the porcelain, and flakes along the cut. This has worked perfectly. I don't see any flaking, any chips. So this is working well. And then this is just a rigid 7-inch blade porcelain. You can see the porcelain pattern on the diamonds there. So in our pattern for our porcelain patio, we're gonna have a 1 foot piece. So I'm cutting each of these in half, and 1 foot piece along, and then 2 foot, 2 foot, 2 foot, 2 foot, 2 foot, until we get to 11 feet. Client wanted exactly 11 feet, but we always talk to them about we could do 12 feet because it works perfectly. Then we don't have to do the cuts and we don't have to charge you for the labor, but we also wanted to make sure that we've got exactly what the client wanted. And then we'll go Then we'll go running bond pattern. So just like the bricks, where they're staggered. So we'll have a full piece, full piece, full piece, full piece, full piece all along, and half, and then a full piece, full piece, full piece, full piece all the way here, and then a half piece. So it'll alternate full, half, coming down here to give us that staggered brick pattern. One thing to consider with that staggered brick pattern is if you have the length where it works out to a full piece, essentially, where you can have a full row, full pieces, and then a cut piece on either end for that second row, you have to factor in the thickness of your blade, because that'll take off 1/8 of an inch, which means you'll have a 1/16 of an inch on either side of the patio shorter. And 1/16 of an inch isn't that much, but depending on how good your cuts are and how they look, you may be left with somewhat noticeable gap on either side. So you might want to order a little bit additional to have one cut piece that is exactly half, not that 1/8 of an inch off, and then have throw away the other slightly less than half piece. Even though it's a waste of product, I prefer that. So far it is 2 o'clock. We started laying around 10. That's 4 hours. Probably got about 20 pieces laid. So that is approximately 5 pieces per hour. So we are using an open graded base in the HPB in the inside. Anywhere that there's a soft side is trass. And this is a cementitious mixture with HPB. and it solidifies, it becomes rock hard, and then you back butter the tile with this adhesion elutrient. The Romex guys we had on earlier on the YouTube channel, and they explained this much better than I ever could, but this you back butter onto the tiles and then you set them into the HPB for the inlay, and then the trass will come along for the final 2 feet, and then plus a 3 to 4 inch extension off the back of it. So that is how you kind of get your edge restraint almost with that, so that doesn't laterally push out. It's completely solid against it. As you can see, our final screed along that outside and along here still needs to be done. I have found that when laying these, we started with screeding everything. I found that it's really been beneficial, especially with stepping on your screed layer and laying a porcelain where it needs to be, that if you just fine tune it afterwards. So I set my level right underneath and I scrape back just to make sure we're at a good level, and then we put our back butter and then set them in and put our 4-foot level on them each and every way, level this way and a slight slope coming this way towards us. This is the trass compound, and it mixes every 4:1 to HPB to the trass, and it looks like Rice Krispie squares once it's all done. And yeah, the water we've been mixing in the steel mixer. It's been going all right. A drum electric gas powered steel or cement mixer might be a little bit better, but this has been going fine. And this is going to allow water to permeate through, but also act as a edge restraint for our porcelain patio. So with the gutter in the way, and you can't get a string line right against the foundation because of the downspout, you lay it off of the foundation. So I measure it off the foundation 5 inches there, I measure it off the foundation 5 inches here, and then when I lay these, I try to follow that 5 inches, because the foundation is never perfectly straight. You can see our line is perfectly straight, and just watch the foundation line. Wider, 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 and up here we're going to get to a point where it is much thinner. What this back buttering and setting into HPB is supposed to do is take away the hollow sound. I don't hear any hollow sound. And also, if you step on the corners and the edges, it's not going to tip the actual porcelain slab, and you won't get any grinding noises, especially when sand is in the joints. We use these tile spacers to get a good 1/8 of an inch joint all across. I did buy these, which are completely useless because these are only for tiles. I realized that you can probably get the larger ones, but I got the smaller ones, and these are supposed to help you stepping on them and making sure they're stable, not to bridge any differences between them. You definitely don't need these. As long as you're fairly okay with a rubber mallet and a 4-foot level, you don't need these. Use the Milwaukee mixer with the spiral paddle, and I've been mixing it into this so that I can just move it over to where we're back buttering, and a nice peanut butter consistency. This might be a little bit too, that's pretty good. And put it on, back butter, and then you get to about 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, so that when you actually mallet it down into the truss, that it doesn't block the permeability. So you don't want, if this was the bottom, about 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch away, so that when you mallet it and that spreads out, it doesn't block our joint here. We got 1/8 of an inch joint, and our Ecofine, our permeable jointing compound, is going to go in that to finalize things. Our truss extends about 3-4 inches past the final. Got to clean up a little bit of an edge there. This cut went in nicely. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this pipe and how I'm going to hide that, because the way it extends is already below actual porcelain. So I don't know what I'm going to do there yet. When we're cutting this, what I do is I line up the spacer on either side to make sure that we got our even spacing. And then before we actually cut it, I just put it against our pipe. I take a square, a small square, and square up the edges, draw lines going across here. That's just my guide. And then I use a piece of 4-inch pipe. I put it down. I know that we're going to be right against the edge there. So I know that the edge of my pipe should line up with that edge. And then I draw, and then I just take my time with the saw and cut nice and clean slits. Take my hammer, hit it, and then continue that, because I can't go all the way in. The saw is not deep enough. So I just take my time, cut, 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 break, 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 cut, 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 break, 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 and then get to the edge here and clean up this as much as possible to get a nice, good curve there. The last thing we need to do is fit this, get this underground, and be able to actually drill a hole wherever this is going to land. Now we're just going to touch up the edges, put our sod down, and get this jointing installation done, and we'll wrap this thing up. So you can see this truss bed has fully cured and completely permeable, except when we clog it up with this soil. But the porcelain is only 1 inch, and we need that for our sod anyway, so no other really way to do it, unless I was to put fabric down. I don't know if I like that, because that'll get clogged anyways, and this part doesn't necessarily need to be permeable. It's just our joints more so. We extend that out. That's extended, in some places extended more or less, about 4 or 5 inches, and then our base extends 6 inches here and 12 inches along here, just to give us a little bit of an area to be able to build up here. To get, obviously we had to build this up about 4 inches at the deepest and about 2 inches down here, just to be able to get that where we need it. Hey, I hope this video's helped you in some way. If it has, please give this video a like, comment below any questions that you may have, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.